Tomorrow, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, will testify before the Senate Armed Services Committee, putting him right there in the middle of a political battle where, in an ideal world, no general should ever be. This comes after we learned Milley made 2 secret phone calls to reassure China in the final days of the Trump administration. He'll also be answering questions about the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. So let's bring in Jeff Lee, political partner from the Truman National Security Project, up late with me to talk about all of this. Jeff, welcome to the show tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Man, I'll tell you what, when you talk about General Milley, I mean, it's not one, there are so many things out there that I think that members of Congress want some answers to, whether it is Afghanistan, whether it is those calls to China. What do you expect to come out of this? Do you expect there to be revelations, or is this really a chance for the political class to get their digs in?
Well, I think it's going to be 2 things. One, it's going to be a very contentious conversation. General Milley will be doing his best to explain the protocols, the processes that he had. He'll be in a position to explain what he was doing, that it was in regular accord with civilian and military relations. On the other hand, it will give the political class an opportunity to really assert the civilian control, and I think also to score political points where they can, to let it be known that the civilians are in control.
But in the grand scheme of things, when we talk about especially Afghanistan, because it seems as though he was on the same page as Lloyd Austin, they both sort of had the same approach to this sort of thing. You know, when you look at how Afghanistan worked out, how that withdrawal transpired, which anybody within the administration or outside the administration would tend to agree that it didn't go according to plan. What do we learn from that, and are there lessons to be taken away from the way that we pulled out?
I think there's probably 3 key points that Secretary Austin and General Milley are going to be focused in on. The first is going to be on the questions of the withdrawal and some of the key decisions, particularly as it relates to resources, technology that was left behind, what contingency plans that were in place, including the usage of Bagram Air Base, which will be a key question.
Sure.
The second piece is going to be related to the usage of drone strikes and counterterrorism going forward. And, you know, the tragic loss of innocent life from that. There's some important questions on the technology. Was artificial intelligence used? What sort of best practices can we have? And how can we utilize these tools to effectively fight terrorism from the air? And the third piece is trying to look at the status of American allies still in country. What's the military's role to get the remaining 100 American troops out, as well as the thousands of Afghan allies who risked their lives to support the American operations in the country?
There is a perception out there by many, and it seems especially on the right, that there's this new attitude with the military where, to borrow the popular expression, that the military is too woke these days. And you had General Milley testify, or at least he was being questioned about some of the things he reads, and it sort of brought up the idea of critical race theory and that he reads Chairman Mao, and that provided a lot of fodder for his critics. And I think people tend to forget, too, that General Milley was not brought in by Joe Biden. He served under President Trump. He now serves in a new administration. So do you think this is an opportunity, or where we examine the inner workings of the military and where we get a sense of what the priorities may be?
Well, I think the discussion on civilian-military relations is an important question. You have, previous to Secretary Austin, you had Secretary Mattis, who's also a former 4-star as well in that role. So the sort of growing influence of the military class in civilian roles at the service of the president is an important question. I think this will be an opportunity, again, for senators to really dig in and have a discussion about what are the necessary protocols, what are the best practices in place here, and what is sort of seen as justifiable, especially when it comes to managing difficult stakeholders. And I would say in particular, making it very clear that the American-Chinese military relationship is still forming. And I think there has been some confusion on the Chinese side, particularly on the intelligence side. And any way you can diffuse some of that confusion does have a benefit for security going forward.
Are you surprised that General Milley continued in this role into a new administration, or is this sort of, I guess, ideally detached from the realities of a political transition?
I mean, in general, he's at the service of the president, but he's also on terms. So that's not atypical in this case here. He's on fixed terms, and he could, be transitioning to a new role if that was deemed fit. But tradition says he's on a term.
I think when we watch something like this, Jeff, it always comes down to where you stand and your knowledge of the inner workings of it and what we're watching out for. But clearly, a lot to watch out for tomorrow when General Milley's on the Hill. Jeff Lee, I appreciate the insight tonight. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And the Final Five comes back after this.